I am extremely sorry for the delay along with SpongeBob Lost episode, Hope is Lost. I was busy doing other stuff, just to let you know. Enjoy the creepypasta called Dead Bart. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes. They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the episode's production number was 7G06, and the title was Dead Bart. The episode labeled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later, and given Dead Bart's production code to hide the latter's existence. It also was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet and seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present around Matt at the time resulted in them getting very angry, and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt himself. I first heard of it at an event where David Silverman was speaking. Someone in the crowd asked about the episode and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours early. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about Dead Bart would cause them to do everything they could to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd, and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him. He probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode, though, all color drained from his face, and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it was for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into my browser and came to a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text, a link. I clicked on it and a file started downloading. Once the download was complete, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work, the entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, though, I copied the file onto a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer. As I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other, but had very poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer was angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa behaved anxiously, and Bart appeared to have genuine anger and hatred towards his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip. Near the end of the first act, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around, as you'd expect. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animated style of The Simpsons world represented life, and that death made things more realistic. Hence why it was used in this episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with the shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at a table, crying. The crying went on and on, it became more pained and realistic, better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out. They were stretching and blurring, looking like deformed shadows with random bright colors thrown on them. There were faces in the window, flashing in and out so that you were never sure what they looked like. This crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin, and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was lying in front of his tombstone, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw, so you can't tell what he's saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that no one had heard of in 1989, some that haven't been on the show yet. All of them had death dates as well. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpson family on their couch, like in the intros, but all drawn in the hyperrealistic, lifeless style of Bart's corpse. A thought occurred to me after seeing the episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstones to predict the death of living Simpsons guest stars. But there was something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date. Well, what do I think of this creepypasta? It was great for a Nightmare Fuel episode classic, even for a creepypasta. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Splendid creepypasta. Next, I'll do SpongeBob, Hope is Lost. I have to do the double creepypasta today. As the title card flashed, I could immediately see my first assumption was wrong. It wasn't a cheery or slightly edited build. They never had title cards. This was either finished or just ready to leave production. The title card seemed odd. I had never seen anything like it. Instead of the usual fun font they used that popped and seemed colorful, of course, to appeal more to children, it seemed more gothic, something you would see in a horror film. The words in the title card made my heart sink farther. It had to be a joke, right? Why would someone try to scare me this terribly though? The words read, "You nosy intern, you shouldn't have come in here," and the usual happy bubble transition that we were all used to was gone. The text just melted down the screen, almost like blood running down a wall, and it slowly faded into the show from a couple seconds of utter silence. It transitioned into one of the familiar openings, with SpongeBob slowly snoring in bed and Gary sleeping beside him on his newspaper. The blowhole of an alarm clock was there, even the bed was. I began to feel relived. I remembered all this from when I was kid. It seemed normal, but was it? Oh dear God, I was wrong. Forgive me, you must forgive me. I am choked up just writing this. I wanted to forget this, but something compels me to share my story. I was expecting the blowhole to go off, and SpongeBob to start his typical routine. Oh, how bad that thing annoyed me as a kid. But it didn't come. There must have been at least just 3+ minutes of just SpongeBob snoring then. Something finally happened. It started to slowly pan into his face. Oh, so slowly, waiting in anticipation, just dying for something to finally happen. I would later greatly regret this decision. Oh, what I would give if it had just ended right then and there. As it finally reached deep into his face, you could clearly see his expression. It was one of horror, malice, one someone in a terrible nightmare would have. His eyes almost seemed as if they had been stitched shut. It then had a transition, not the usual fade to black or the joyful bubbles, but something altogether much more sinister. It was a fiery transition. Almost like the previous screen had just burned up. By all appearances we were now in SpongeBob's mind, in his dream, his nightmare. It appeared to be Bikini Bottom. Oh, but there was something very, very wrong. The whole city seemed in shambles, the horizon blood red, the buildings burning. SpongeBob was just walking down the road. It seemed the typical path he would normally take to the Krusty Krab. The people around him, oh dear God, I still remember it. The blood-curdling screams. At this moment, I realized that there was something very wrong. This had no appeal to children. Hell, most adults would find this a bit morbid at this point. The scream, oh the scream. It was one of someone in great pain, being tortured or slowly dying, a blood-curdling scream. At this point, I couldn't see who it was coming from, just SpongeBob walking, slowly, silently, as the screaming slowly continued, getting louder and louder. Oh God, I almost wanted to claw my eyes out when he turned the corner. I saw the source of the screams. It was terrifying, horrible, inhuman. It was Patrick hammered into a stake almost like the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But also his stomach, oh God, it had been torn open, his entrails slow leaking out. The look on his face, seeing SpongeBob, he seemed relived for a moment. Almost as if his salvation had come. His eyes began to water, just staring at SpongeBob, almost beckoning. His eyes spoke for him. They screamed, please, oh God, please help me. We then transitioned over to SpongeBob and he now just stood there, staring back at Patrick, watching his friend slowly suffer and die. Patrick then began to weep slowly, almost as if he understood something that I, the viewer, did not. SpongeBob then began to open his mouth. Slowly in a low, almost satanic, demonic voice, he whispered, "Suffer, fat one. You, this whole town brought this upon themselves," and then he turned and slowly walked away. At this moment, I screamed out in horror, almost praying that someone would hear me. Someone would walk in, it would cost me my internship but anything to end this. Now you may find yourself thinking, why don't you just stand up and attempt once more to escape? I couldn't. Something, deep down inside me told me if I moved, I would regret it. I had to finish watching. I just had to. SpongeBob then continued down the road, slowly approaching the Krusty Krab. In the background you could now hear more screams. Some were horrible, blood-curdling ones. You could tell they came from one in great agony. But there had been one new sound thrown in, a horrible twisted laugh. One of great malice. Almost as if someone had been hunting an animal, and thoroughly enjoying himself all too much. You could hear them very distinctly, fading away into the background, as if they were chasing someone, something in the other direction. You could hear them. Oh, even faded, it was still heart-stopping, gahahaha. SpongeBob seemed unfazed, as if he was almost used to it. You now could slowly hear clattering behind him, slowly breaking the mind-numbing silence. It sounded, almost as if something was crawling slowly toward him. SpongeBob then slowly turned, as if he expected this, and as he slowly turned his face slowly came into view. His eyes. They changed. They no longer seemed to be his normal, happy, joyful-looking eyes. They were blood-red and full of malice, hate, and anger. One would expect this face from a demon. Hell, even the devil himself would find this look fitting. I myself now slowly began to weep with no end to this horror in sight. His eyes now fixed on something. It slowly transitioned over. It was Patrick. Dear God. Oh my God, forgive me. No human should be forced to see that. His entire lower body was now missing, with his intestines slowly trailing behind him, the trail of blood behind him. What was left of his arms had huge holes in them, almost as if something had been torn out of them. The nails. Had he ripped himself off the stake? His face slowly came up. His eyes beckoned once more to SpongeBob, but this time they said something different. He slowly began to speak, and I'll never forget those words. Kill me, please. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Just end it, please. I can't take the pain. SpongeBob responded, with a hellish tone, even worse than before. You ask for forgiveness from me? Do you take me as your God? You will receive no divine forgiveness from me. You see, it's my job to make you suffer. Burn, fat one, and with the flick of a wrist, arms, hellish arms, seemed to just sprout from the ground and grabbed a hold of him, and tore him down, into what seemed an endless, hellish abyss. All the way down you could hear that blood-curdling scream from before, Oh God, no, no, no. Then, SpongeBob slowly turned, as if nothing had happened. He even let out a small, evil giggle, hee hee ha ha. By this point, I had almost been wishing for the same thing to happen to me, just so I wouldn't have to see this anymore. At this point I was crying so hard I almost felt like a little girl. I felt weak, empty, as if I was about to throw up. As much as I wanted to, I just couldn't choke anything out. SpongeBob then slowly approached, finally, the doors of the Krusty Krab. The path behind him, oh God, the usual cheery path to the entrance had stakes all along it. Into them were hammered in the corpses of our familiar favorite characters. Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Larry the Lobster, Pearl, Squidward, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, Mrs. Puff, and so on. And on their faces, they all too wore that expression of utter sorrow and horror. As if they had died crying in fear of what stood before them. We then transitioned back to SpongeBob, who now reached for the door. Now something happened out of this horrible, nightmarish thing I was witnessing. The whole building began to shake, almost as if during an earthquake. The only light in the room blew out and the power went out. I was now in the dark, alone in this shaking building. I could hear my fellow interns flee, and the developers run out. Without even a second thought of where I was, you could hear their car tires squeal as they raced away. Why had they been in such a hurry to escape? I then turned back to the show, almost as if I was being forced to watch. He now stood alone, in the Krusty Krab. All lights were out, and there was utter silence, except for a small red glow, coming from the door that usually led to the kitchen. That oh-so-familiar kitchen where SpongeBob usually stood making his delicacies. He began to slowly approach it. Slowly in silence. As he reached it, he stood in front of the door, almost as if he himself didn't want to go in. Reproachfully, he slowly turned the knob and the door swung open. Oh God, how I wish I could unsee what I saw and heard. SpongeBob faced a hellish demon of indescribable horror, burning in a portal to what seemed to be hell itself. Was this the devil? Oh God, the fear that came over me in that moment as its mouth slowly opened. Did you make them suffer, son? It asked in the most hellish tone imaginable. One of extreme rage, anger, malice, hatred. SpongeBob replied, slowly saying, almost afraid to reply, yes, Father, they cried, suffered, and burned. A feast of souls waits for you below. It replies simply, good, son. Now back to your cage. And be gone with you, and at that moment, I finally threw up all over my own lap. Something began to emerge from SpongeBob and his body almost slowly deflated, it almost seemed to be a human. A dog. Something. Oh God, I can't even find the words. It crawled toward the portal, and with a swift kick its father kicked it into what appeared to be hell itself. Then it turned slowly and looked at me, the viewer. And slowly it mouthed something. So subtle, so quiet, but chilling to the very core. It seemed as if it was speaking to me. It said, oh, don't worry, your world is next, it'll suffer at your hands, as this one did at his. It slowly transitioned over to SpongeBob, or what was left of his corpse. Just skin. Oh, you'll all atone for what you have done. All of you. You're next. And with that the computer itself slammed shut and burst into flames. As it slowly burned I could only weep at this horror. This couldn't be real. Nick. Nick. Wake up. My eyes slowly flashed open. I was in the break room on the floor. Above me stood my friend Tina, who said, oh thank God you're okay. You just collapsed. You've been out for about 5 minutes. My whole body was rattled, broken almost. Turning to her, I had this uncontrollable urge. Turning to Tina, I said, don't thank God on this day. He won't save us. He has abandoned us. His abominations. His failed creations. Tina looked aghast, horrified. She ran out screaming. I quickly got up and quietly left. And here I sit, writing my story of the day, calmly, maybe now I accept my place. And oh, I have work to do. Isn't that right, Tina? Slowly turning to her dismembered body. You're next. I end with this, I am coming. I am his chosen slayer for this world. A messenger of hell itself. And oh, I am coming for you. Each and every one of you. And you'll never stop me. Don't try to run or hide. I'll find you. Okay. I think this creepypasta is mocking God and Jesus. This is just horrible, just as bad as THX creepypastas but worse. I will give it a 1 out of 10. Okay, that's it, bye.